This is my second overview on the joints and ligaments of the human body with the full human body joint and ligament names for my biotech R&D, especially in human longevity biotech and other medical biotechnologies. Wikipedia is used as the main reference. I haven't had the time to check the proper pronunciations, so I'll improve my pronunciations in the next version and mispronounce some, if not all, words in this version. Human body joints have types, terminology, motions, and components. Human body joint types include fibrous joint, gomphosis joint, also known as a dental alveolar syndesmosis or peg and socket joint, suture joint, syndesmosis joint, interosseous membrane connective tissue, cartilaginous joint, synchrodrosis joint, symphysis joint, synovial joint, also known as diarthrosis, which include plane joint, 1 degree, hinge joint, pivot joint, 2 degree, candyloid joint, saddle joint, 3 degree, ball and socket joint, synostosis by range of motion, which include synarthrosis joint, amphiarthrosis joint, diarthrosis joint, also known as synovial joint. Human body joint terminology includes kinesiology, anatomical terms of motion, agonist muscles, also called prime movers, and antagonist muscles. Human body joint motions include general motions, which include flexion, bending movement, and extension, straightening movement, adduction motion and abduction motion, internal rotation and external rotation, elevation movement in a superior direction, and depression movement in an inferior direction. Specialized upper limbs motions, which include protraction anterior movement and retraction posterior movement, supination anterior rotational movement, and pronation posterior rotational movement. Specialized lower limbs motions, which include plantar flexion, bending movement, and dorsiflexion, bending movement, eversion movement or motion, and inversion movement or motion. Human body joint components include capsular, which include joint capsule or articular capsule, synovial membrane connective tissue, fibrous membrane connective tissue, synovial fluid, which also called synovia, synovial bursa sac, articular disc, fibrocartilage, and meniscus, fibrocartilaginous anatomical structure, extracapsular, which include ligament, fibrous connective tissue, and anthesis connective tissue. Joint and ligaments of the human head and neck include temporomandibular joint, TMJ, and atlanto-occipital joint. Temporomandibular joint, TMJ, include articular capsule, capsular ligament, articular disc, lateral temporomandibular ligament, also known as the external lateral ligament, medial sphenomandibular ligament, stylomandibular ligament. Atlanto-occipital joint includes atlanto-occipital articulation capsules, membranes, anterior atlanto-occipital membrane, anterior atlanto-occipital ligament, posterior atlanto-occipital membrane, posterior atlanto-occipital ligament. Joints and ligaments of the human arm include shoulder, elbow, forearm, and hand.